Are you ready to reclaim your peace and establish boundaries that truly protect your happiness? In this special video, we'll dive into 12 toxic behaviors you should never tolerate in any relationship. Think about this. Have you ever felt like someone in your life is quietly draining your energy or subtly diminishing your joy? As Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The truth is, while we can't always control the actions of others, we absolutely have control over how we respond. This video isn't just about identifying those harmful behaviors. It's about equipping you with Stoic strategies to stand firm and maintain inner tranquility. Be sure to stay with me until the end, as I'll reveal the most common toxic behavior that many of us overlook, and how understanding it can transform your relationships and bring clarity to your life. Before we dive in, if you find value in these deep, thought-provoking insights, please hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss the chance to strengthen your mind and enrich your relationships. Let's get started. Let's dive into the first behavior. Have you ever felt like your emotions are on a roller coaster and you can't quite figure out why? Perhaps you're unknowingly caught in the grip of emotional manipulation. Imagine someone holding a remote control to your feelings, able to turn on your guilt or switch off your confidence with just the press of a button. It might sound like something out of a science fiction movie, but in reality, some people masterfully manipulate emotions, and you may not even realize it. Emotional manipulation is like an invisible toxin seeping into relationships, deceiving you into believing their actions are for your benefit when, in truth, they serve only their own agenda. Think about a time when someone used guilt as a weapon or lavished you with excessive flattery, only to follow it up with impossible demands. A friend of mine was once in a relationship where her partner constantly made her feel guilty if she didn't cater to his every request. Statements like, "If you loved me, you'd do this," or "Only you understand me," were his go-to tools. Over time, she began doubting her own judgment, leaving her trapped in a fog of confusion and emotional exhaustion. It took her a long time to realize that these words were not expressions of love, but calculated tactics to control her. Emotional manipulation often hides behind sweet words, leaving deep scars in its wake. Even Aristotle warned against those who manipulate emotions with rhetoric instead of appealing to reason, and he was right. This behavior can erode your self-esteem and turn you into a passive participant in your own life. Have you ever felt a constant sense of unease around someone, or found yourself doing things you didn't want to just to keep the peace? These are red flags you should never ignore. When dealing with emotional manipulation, remember that you always have the power to choose your response. As the Stoic philosopher Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." Instead of reacting impulsively, take a moment to breathe, tune in to your true feelings, and establish clear boundaries. Picture yourself building an emotional fortress around your heart. The walls of this fortress are your self-worth. The moat is your ability to say no. And the drawbridge opens only for those who truly deserve your trust. To break free from manipulative relationships, start by educating yourself. Learn to recognize emotional manipulation and the tactics it involves. Second, trust your instincts. If something feels off, it likely is. Third, seek support from people who respect and validate your feelings. Lastly, remember that being alone is often better than staying in a toxic relationship. Psychologist Carl Rogers once said, "The curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change." Accept that you deserve healthy, honest relationships where you're valued for who you truly are. Once you embrace this truth, your life will begin to transform, and you'll discover the strength to reclaim your power, no matter how hard others may try to manipulate you. Number 2, the silence that screams. Imagine stepping into a dark room, not filled with shouts or noise, but with a silence so heavy it weighs on your soul. This isn't the silence of peace. It's a weapon, invisible yet piercing straight into your heart. When used intentionally to harm, silence can cut deeper than any harsh words, leaving emotional scars that take years to heal. Have you ever felt invisible to someone you deeply care about? That sense of non-existence, of not mattering, can crush your self-worth in an instant. Science tells us that our brains are wired to seek social connections. When someone ignores us, it's not just indifference. It's an unspoken message, one that says, "You're not important enough for my attention." That silent rejection hits us like a dagger, wounding our self-esteem. Some people wield silence as a way to control, while others use it because they don't know how to face conflict. Whatever the reason, the pain and confusion it causes for the person on the receiving end are undeniable. I once witnessed a close friend endure this kind of silent treatment from her partner. She confided that whenever they had a disagreement, he wouldn't argue or yell. He would retreat into silence. Day after day, that silence gnawed away at her. She spent countless hours questioning herself, wondering, what did I do wrong? But the truth is, it wasn't her fault. His silence was his way of controlling her emotions, forcing her to grapple with insecurity and doubt, not just about their relationship, but about her own self-worth. If you find yourself in a similar situation, know that you are not alone. The first step is to acknowledge your feelings. Whether they're pain, frustration, or anger, they are all valid. Next, choose a calm moment to express how you feel. Use phrases like, "When you go silent, I feel," instead of making accusations. And most importantly, remind yourself that their behavior does not define your value. Take time to care for your emotional well-being by doing things that bring you joy. Immerse yourself in activities you love, and surround yourself with people who truly appreciate you. If the silence persists, have the courage to reflect on whether the relationship is worth continuing. As psychologist John Gottman once said, contempt is the single greatest predictor of relationship failure. Even outside of marriage, this principle applies to any relationship. If silence has become the norm, it may be time to consider whether it's bringing you more pain than joy. You deserve to be seen, heard, and valued. Don't let someone else's silence diminish your worth. Remember, the power to change lies within you, and there are people out there who will cherish you for who you are. Are you ready to reclaim your voice even in the deepest silence? Number 3. Constant criticism. Have you ever felt like you were in a room full of echoes where every word you spoke was met with criticism? It's as if every step you take, every decision you make is scrutinized under harsh light. And no matter what you do, it's never good enough. But pause for a moment and reflect. Not all criticism is the same. Criticism is like a blade. Some are wielded to heal and fix, while others are meant to harm and leave scars. Constructive criticism, like a scalpel in the hands of a surgeon, can spark positive change. Destructive criticism, however, is like a machete in the hands of someone reckless. It cuts down confidence, joy, and creativity. I once knew a friend who was deeply passionate about art. She spent hours each day painting, dreaming of one day hosting her own gallery exhibition. But then she encountered someone who constantly pointed out flaws in her work. Their words weren't aimed at helping her improve. They were meant to chip away at her self-belief. Each piece of criticism became another brick in the wall, separating her from her dreams. Slowly, she stopped painting, convinced she wasn't good enough. The tragedy wasn't her lack of talent. It was allowing someone else's words to dictate how she saw herself. So, why do some people criticize so relentlessly? Sometimes it's a reflection of their own deep insecurities. As psychologist Carl Rogers once said, the loudest person in the room is often the weakest. Other times it's just a bad habit, a way for them to feel powerful. The reason matters less than how you respond. You don't have to be the emotional punching bag for someone else's negativity. Imagine yourself as an emotional Aikido master. Instead of meeting criticism head-on, you redirect its energy. Instead of feeling hurt, you can say, "Thank you for your perspective, but I don't agree," or "I appreciate your opinion, but I choose a different path." Remember, not every piece of criticism directed at you has to be absorbed as truth. More importantly, strengthen your self-esteem. Think of your confidence as a muscle. Every time you refuse to let unfair criticism affect you, you're training it to grow stronger. Take a moment each day to affirm your worth. Stand in front of the mirror and say, "I am worthy. I am enough. I'm getting better every day." It might feel silly at first, but trust me, it works. Even more empowering, you can turn criticism into an opportunity for growth. Treat every piece of criticism like a seed. Some are weeds that need to be removed, but others, if nurtured correctly, can grow into beautiful flowers. Learn to filter out the harmful and keep only what helps you improve. Here's a challenge for you. The next time you're criticized, don't react immediately. Take a deep breath and ask yourself, is this criticism meant to help me grow, or is it only meant to hurt me? If it's the former, be grateful and reflect on it. If it's the latter, let it drift away like a leaf in the wind. Remember, you're the gardener of your mind. You decide which seeds to nurture. Choose what nourishes you and let go of the rest. Number 4, control disguised as love. Have you ever wondered if the love someone shows you is genuine or just a cleverly disguised form of control? True love is meant to give you wings to soar, but when love turns into a golden cage, you may start to lose yourself. I once watched a close friend become trapped in a relationship where every move was monitored. She had to reply to messages immediately, her friendships were questioned, and every decision required approval. At first, she thought it was care, but over time she realized she was becoming a prisoner in her own relationship. Control disguised as sweet love is one of the most dangerous forms of emotional abuse. Psychologist John Gottman pointed out that emotional intrusion is a leading cause of unhappiness in many relationships. You might not notice it at first, but if your partner frequently checks your phone for your benefit, criticizes your clothing or friends, or makes you feel guilty for wanting time alone, these are red flags you shouldn't ignore. True love doesn't hold you back. It should set you free. This subtle form of control slowly erodes your personal freedom. It makes you abandon your passions, isolate from friends, and halt your personal growth. As writer Virginia Woolf once said, "I cannot exist without you, but somehow I've forgotten myself." But you don't have to settle for this. You can establish boundaries without destroying the relationship. Start by listening to yourself, recognizing what makes you feel hurt, and communicating honestly. Use phrases like, "I feel," instead of accusations. Don't be afraid to ask for space, because setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's self-respect. If you're stuck in a controlling relationship, reclaiming your autonomy might feel daunting, but it begins with small steps. Try revisiting a hobby you once loved, reconnecting with old friends, or making small decisions without seeking approval. Every independent act is a victory, helping you reconnect with your true self. Remember, healthy love is like two trees growing side by side. Their roots may intertwine, but each tree needs its own space to reach for the sky. Don't be afraid to live authentically. Before we wrap up, if you made it this far, comment below with "I love wisdom," so I can recognize you. Let's continue learning, growing and building better lives together. Number 5, emotional instability. Have you ever felt like you were standing in the eye of an emotional storm where every gust of wind seemed to blow away your sense of peace? That's exactly how I felt when I found myself living alongside someone emotionally unstable, a person whose moods were as unpredictable as the weather. One moment, they were calm and loving, and the next, they would erupt into anger without warning. I often found myself walking on eggshells, unsure of what had triggered the change. Each day became a guessing game. Would it be a sunny day, or would the storm clouds roll in? Over time, the constant shifts left me feeling exhausted and questioning my own sanity, as if everything was somehow my fault. But the truth is, I realized that I wasn't responsible for someone else's emotions. As Carl Rogers famously said, "The curious paradox is that when I accept myself just as I am, then I can change." This principle also applies to others. I couldn't control their emotions, but I had complete control over my reactions. When dealing with someone emotionally unstable, communication became my anchor. I learned to stay calm, like a tightrope walker finding balance, refusing to let their storm knock me down. I began using phrases like, "I understand that you're upset, but I need respectful communication," or "This seems important to you, but can we talk about it when we're both feeling calmer?" These statements allowed me to maintain control without escalating the tension. Emotional boundaries became the fence around my mental sanctuary. They didn't push others away, but protected me from unnecessary harm. I came to understand that setting boundaries wasn't selfish. It was self-care. I would say things like, "I care about you, but I can't stay when you're yelling. I'll come back when things have settled down." And slowly, I noticed a profound difference. I felt protected without causing harm to the other person. When their emotional instability became overwhelming and started to take a toll on daily life, I realized that love alone wasn't enough. I mustered the courage to suggest professional help, but not in a judgmental way. I said, "I've noticed you're struggling to manage your emotions lately. Have you ever considered speaking with someone who could provide tools to help you feel better?" In this way, I offered them a path to support without making them feel attacked. Ultimately, I learned that my emotional health had to be my top priority. I started practicing self-care through meditation, exercise, and surrounding myself with people who brought me peace. I cultivated a mindset that allowed me to become the calm in the storm. As the famous saying goes, you can't control the wind, but you can adjust your sails. With patience and courage, I found tranquility within myself, no matter what chaos swirled around me. Number 6, the blame game. Have you ever felt like you're carrying a backpack full of stones, but none of those stones are actually yours? That's exactly what it feels like when you're made to shoulder responsibility for someone else's problems. Blame is a subtle yet powerful weapon, and today we're going to learn how to disarm it. Imagine blame as a pie. A small slice of that pie may belong to you, your personal responsibility. But the majority of it, that's the unwarranted guilt others project onto you. Learning to distinguish between these two is like reading an emotional map. It requires awareness and a keen sense of clarity. I remember a time when a close friend blamed me for not helping them out with a financial issue. Their words felt like a sharp blade, cutting into my sense of self-worth. For a while, I carried that guilt, questioning if I had failed them. But when I took a step back and reflected, I realized their poor financial decisions were not my burden to bear. I had to set boundaries and firmly say, I understand you're going through a tough time, but I cannot take responsibility for your choices. That moment wasn't easy, but it freed me from unnecessary guilt and gave me the strength to stand firm against emotional manipulation. As psychologist Albert Ellis reminded us, the issue doesn't lie in other people or circumstances, but in how we perceive them. Unwarranted guilt is like a silent thief, gradually stealing away your self-esteem. But here's the good news. You can learn to recognize it and stop it in its tracks. When someone says things like, "If you really cared, you'd do this for me," consider it a red flag. Such words aren't genuine expressions of care. They're tools of manipulation. Don't be afraid to set boundaries, much like a gardener who decides which weeds to pull from their garden. Think of unwarranted guilt as knots in a rope. Some knots are simple to untangle, while others require patience and persistence. As you work to loosen each one, you'll feel the weight on your shoulders lighten. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts." By applying this philosophy, you'll see those burdens of guilt gradually dissolve, leaving you with emotional freedom. Try this exercise. Stand in front of a mirror and say, "I am responsible for my actions, but not for the feelings of others." This isn't selfishness, it's wisdom. As Paulo Coelho once wrote, "When you say yes to others, make sure you're not saying no to yourself." So, the next time someone tries to hand you their heavy backpack of guilt, smile and say, "No, thank you. I've got my own backpack, and that's enough." Number 7. Social isolation. Have you ever wondered why some people seem to disappear from the embrace of their friends and family without explanation? It's not a coincidence. It could be a sign of a dangerous control tactic, social isolation. Imagine being surrounded by an invisible cage, with each bar quietly put in place over time. It doesn't start with overt actions, but with seemingly harmless suggestions. Perhaps your partner frequently tells you that your friends don't understand you, or that your family doesn't truly support you. Bit by bit, you find yourself cut off from your loved ones, believing it's for your own good. In reality, you're being stripped of your support network, your freedom, and eventually, your own identity. I once witnessed a close friend go through this. At first, she started cutting back on outings, saying her partner needed her attention. But as time passed, missed calls, unanswered invitations, and her absence at significant events painted a clear picture. She had been completely isolated. That once vibrant, joyful person slowly faded into the background of her own life, entirely dependent on a relationship that was diminishing her with each passing day. This behavior isn't just about control, it's about creating emotional dependency. It's like someone cutting every safety rope while you're balancing precariously on life's tightrope. But remember, recognizing this is the first step to breaking free. Ask yourself, does your partner get upset when you spend time with others? Do they control who you talk to or where you go? Do they make you feel guilty for wanting to maintain relationships outside of them? These red flags cannot be ignored. Your relationships with family and friends are like thriving plants that need constant care and nurturing to grow. Don't let anyone let them wither. Even if it's difficult, actively work to reconnect with your loved ones. One small step, one meaningful action at a time, a phone call, a message, a surprise visit, all these gestures hold immense value. These relationships are your lifelines during the toughest times. And remember, no one has the right to control your entire life but you. Number 8. Subtle sabotage. Sabotage in relationships is like a silent poison, quietly seeping in and tainting what's most precious in your life. It's not always obvious or direct. Sometimes it's an offhand comment that diminishes your efforts, such as, "That project seems a bit too big for you," or "You're just lucky, not really talented." These words don't just undermine your value. They plant seeds of doubt in your mind, causing you to hesitate just when you're trying to move forward. I remember a time when I shared with a friend that I was learning a new skill I was truly passionate about. Instead of encouraging me, he smirked and said, "But do you really have time to pursue this? Seems like a waste of effort." At first, I felt confused, wondering if I was indeed wrong for dedicating my time to it. But then I realized his words weren't about my abilities, but rather about his insecurities. Sabotaging behavior often stems from fear and jealousy. Your success might feel threatening to someone else, or they may fear losing you as you move forward. But here's the truth. Your light isn't meant to overshadow others. It's meant to guide your own path. Protect your goals by establishing clear boundaries. Sometimes, the best thing you can do is keep your dreams to yourself, sharing them only with those who truly support you. I've learned that not everyone deserves to know about your plans and accomplishments. Once you achieve your goals, your success will speak for itself. To combat negativity, nurture your belief in yourself. Keep a journal of your achievements, no matter how small, to remind yourself of all you've accomplished. Surround yourself with positive people, those who push you to go further rather than hold you back. And when necessary, stand your ground with assertiveness and respect. You don't need to be confrontational, but you shouldn't remain silent either. Say, "I appreciate your opinion, but I trust in my ability to make this happen." Think of your circle of relationships as a garden. Cultivate and nurture the connections that support you, and don't be afraid to prune away the ones that cast shadows. Success isn't a finite pie that everyone has to fight for. There's enough for everyone. Keep people close who understand this, and you'll see your dreams blossom brighter than ever before. Number 9. The inability to apologize. Have you ever encountered someone who simply couldn't bring themselves to say, "I'm sorry," no matter how significant their mistake was? It's as if apologizing is a luxury they're unwilling to afford. But think about this. If relationships are like a garden, apologies are the vital water that nurtures the plants of trust and respect. Without them, that garden will slowly wither. So why do some people refuse to water this soil? The reasons vary. They might see apologizing as a sign of weakness, as losing control, or they may lack the courage to face their mistakes. These unsaid words act like an invisible barrier, keeping them away from the deep connections they could have. What's the consequence of not apologizing? It's like a powerful stream eroding the foundation of a strong building, gradually washing away respect and breaking down trust bit by bit. I once experienced this firsthand with a close friend who couldn't admit she had hurt me. Instead of addressing it, she avoided the issue and blamed the circumstances. That disappointment not only fractured our relationship, but left a deep sadness within me. What I learned, though, is that you can't wait for apologies from others, like waiting for a train that will never arrive. You have to move forward, freeing yourself by forgiving, not for them, but for your own peace. Forgiving without receiving an apology isn't easy, but it's the greatest gift you can give yourself. It's like releasing a heavy balloon and letting the wind carry it far from your mind. Forgiveness doesn't excuse the wrong, but liberates you from emotional burdens. However, this isn't just about forgiveness. When you muster the courage to genuinely apologize, you open the door to healing, not just for others, but also for yourself. I remember breaking my mum's cherished antique lamp, a treasured family heirloom. Instead of making excuses, I faced the mistake, admitted my fault, and immediately repaired it. Strangely enough, not only was the lamp restored, but my bond with my mom also grew stronger. Remember, an apology isn't a sign of weakness, but an act of immense courage. It shows that you're strong enough to set your ego aside and act for the benefit of your relationship. The next time you make a mistake, don't hesitate to say, "I'm sorry," and back it up with action. These simple words can transform not only your relationships, but your entire life, fostering growth and forging deeper connections than ever before. Number 10. Constant comparison. Have you ever felt like no matter how much effort you put in, it's never enough for someone? Like you're in a never-ending race where the finish line keeps moving further away with every step you take? That's the trap of constant comparison, a mental snare that diminishes every personal accomplishment. But why do some people live by comparison? Often, it's a reflection of their own deep insecurities. By tearing you down, they temporarily feel lifted. However, it's not your responsibility to fill their voids. The only comparison that truly matters is with yourself, your past self, and your present self. Comparison, when used correctly, is a powerful tool, like a chef's knife crafting exquisite dishes. In the wrong hands, though, it becomes a weapon of destruction. Instead of looking at others, turn your gaze inward. How have you grown? How far have you come toward achieving your goals? Remember, life isn't a race where everyone must run at the same pace. Some find career success at 30, while others discover their purpose at 60. Some start a new chapter in middle age and achieve wonders they never imagined. Each journey has its own rhythm, and the most important thing is to sync your steps with your dreams and personal goals. I've been caught in this trap myself. Once, while working on a major project, I was constantly compared to others in my field. Even though I knew I was giving it my all, those endless evaluations weighed heavily on me, making me doubt my worth. It wasn't until I stopped and reflected on my own journey, the challenges I had overcome, the skills I had developed, that I realized my true value wasn't in how I measured up to others, but in how far I'd come compared to my former self. Unfair comparisons are like invisible hammers chipping away at your confidence each day. But you don't have to let them keep hurting you. Focus on healthy inspiration instead of toxic comparisons. Learn from the successes of others rather than letting them make you feel small. Start a gratitude journal and jot down the small victories you achieve daily. Like seeds planted in a garden, these small wins will grow into a forest of confidence and joy over time. When someone unfairly compares you, respond with confidence and firmness. Say, "Thank you for your concern, but I'm following my own path." This isn't an excuse, it's a declaration of your worth. Success isn't a finite pie where someone else's gain means your loss. It's like sunlight. There's enough for everyone. When others shine, it only makes our shared sky brighter. To wrap up, try a simple exercise. Take a piece of paper and write down 10 unique qualities that make you, you. Then set 3 personal goals based on those qualities. This will help you focus on your unique journey and appreciate what you're building. Remember, you are one of a kind, and your light cannot be dimmed by any comparison. The only competitor you need to outshine is the version of yourself from yesterday. So keep moving forward, steadily and confidently, to the rhythm of your heart and soul. Number 11. Constant victimhood. Have you ever felt trapped in an endless cycle of complaints and blame from someone around you? Like they're pulling you down into a deep hole with no intention of climbing out. Constant victimhood isn't just an attitude. It's like an invisible anchor that ties people to their past struggles and failures, preventing them from moving forward. Imagine someone who always has an excuse for their difficulties. It's not my fault. Life is so unfair, or everyone is against me. Do these phrases sound familiar? These individuals often master the art of avoiding responsibility, blaming everything and everyone except themselves. But why do some people fall into this pattern? Psychology suggests that playing the victim can be a form of emotional self-defense. By blaming circumstances or external factors, they avoid confronting their fears, weaknesses, or failures. It's like using an invisible shield to protect themselves from pain, but this same shield also prevents their growth. The cost of this behavior is immense. Those surrounding a perpetual victim often feel emotionally drained, as if trying to fill a bottomless pit with kindness and empathy. I once had a friend who always played the victim in every situation. When he was fired from his job, instead of reflecting on his own mistakes, he blamed his boss, co-workers, and even the entire industry. I tried to listen, offering encouragement and helping him see things differently, but my efforts felt like pouring water into the desert. That's when I realized that to protect myself, I needed to set clear boundaries. Rather than constantly being his emotional hotline, I started encouraging him to take responsibility. One day I asked him, "I understand you're facing challenges, but what do you think you can do to improve the situation?" That simple question made him pause, think, and eventually take action to change his circumstances. Dealing with someone who constantly plays the victim requires firmness and patience. First, you need to set healthy boundaries to protect yourself from emotional exhaustion. Second, encourage them to acknowledge their own responsibilities, not by criticizing them, but by asking questions that inspire action. Don't let their negativity pull you down. Instead, surround yourself with people who bring positivity and inspiration into your life. These individuals not only lift you up, but also help you unlock your potential. In conclusion, constant victimhood isn't just an emotional trap for those stuck in it. It deeply affects those around them as well. Recognizing this pattern is the first step to protecting yourself and encouraging change. You have the power to take control of your life, move past excuses, and keep moving forward. The real question is, are you ready to embrace that power? Number 12. Intermittent interest. Have you ever felt like a bridge that people only cross when they need something? Imagine receiving a call from a friend you haven't heard from in ages. You start to think they genuinely want to reconnect, but it turns out they just need a favor. That uncomfortable feeling isn't a coincidence. What we're talking about here is a toxic behavior that often goes unnoticed. Relationships that only exist when someone wants something from you. It's not just inconvenient. It chips away at your trust and emotional well-being. Philosophers like Aristotle, even thousands of years ago, distinguished between three types of friendships: those based on pleasure, utility, and virtue. Among these, only virtuous friendships are lasting and truly meaningful. But why do some people only reach out when they need help? Psychology suggests that these individuals often carry a fear of rejection or a sense of inadequacy. They seek your help as a way to feel valuable, almost as if they're trying to validate their self-worth. It's ironic, isn't it? Their dependency not only weakens them, but also places you in an uncomfortable position. I recall having a friend like this. She would only call me when she needed something, whether it was fixing her phone or navigating significant personal issues. At first, I didn't notice, and even felt happy to be of help. But over time, I realized her communication always came with a request. It made me feel unappreciated, as though I were just a tool to solve her problems. So, how do you handle this? First, recognize the pattern. If someone only shows up when they need something, it's time to reevaluate your role in the relationship. Second, establish clear boundaries. Don't hesitate to say no if you feel uncomfortable. Your time and energy are valuable, and no one has the right to exploit them. Most importantly, focus on cultivating relationships that are reciprocal, those who stand by you, not just during challenges, but also during moments of joy. Sometimes, an honest conversation can make all the difference. Share your feelings with the person. They might not even realize their behavior, and this could improve the dynamics of your relationship. But if nothing changes, remember that you have every right to create distance. You are not a resource to be tapped into. You are a person worthy of respect. Always keep Maya Angelou's words in mind. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. If you've made it this far, it truly means the world to me. Leave a comment saying, "I can do it," so I know you're one of the most patient and dedicated viewers who stuck with me until the very end of this video. Don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss deep and meaningful content like this in the future. If you found value in this video, please share it with your loved ones or anyone who might benefit from it. Right now, I encourage you to pick one of these 2 videos to continue your journey of exploring Stoic philosophy and gaining deeper insights into human psychology. Sending you a warm hug, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.